What if your CRM data wasn't stranded in Dataverse, but fueling insights across your business? Most organizations treat Dataverse like a walled garden, missing out on the analytics power of Fabric. Today, I'll show you exactly how to punch a hole in that wall and bring your business data together step by step with live examples. Ready to watch your analytics light up in ways you've never seen? Let's unlock Dataverse. Why siloed Dataverse data leaves you guessing. If you work in the world of dynamics, you know the dance already. You log into your Dataverse-powered CRM, pull up those clean dashboards, and for a moment, it looks like everything makes sense. Pipeline by region, open opportunities, maybe you're even splitting out case volumes or lead source. The numbers sit there on glossy charts, but the nagging feeling never really goes away. Something's missing. You can tell a story with these dashboards, but you're forced to fill in the blanks because the context, the why behind the what, is usually nowhere in sight. And you're not alone. Most organizations feed a ton of data into Dataverse. They treat it like the central vault, the default place for anything tied to customers, sales, and support. It makes sense given how intertwined Dataverse is with standard CRM processes. Over time, the sales pipeline, contacts, activities, and support cases all find their way in, building up a sort of digital fossil record of your business relationships. But here's the thing, Dataverse often ends up as this perfectly pruned garden with some impressively tall walls. You see what's growing inside, but what's going on just over the fence is a mystery. Take a typical sales manager. She's staring down a revenue dip this quarter. The executive team wants answers fast. She digs through Dataverse reports, tracking which leads closed and which didn't, and it all looks straightforward enough. But the big question, why did things slow down? Can't be answered within those walls. The marketing team has their own dashboards showing email open rates, campaign click-throughs, maybe some Google Analytics sprinkled on top. Website traffic took a dip, but no one can really say how that's mapping onto the deals in the CRM. The result? A meeting where sales, marketing, and support each bring their own numbers, none of which quite line up, and the real story never gets told. And yes, this has consequences. A lot of companies assume that as long as they're using the same source of truth for core data, they're in good shape. The problem? When you treat Dataverse as the finish line instead of the starting block, you end up with half-baked analytics. Support data stays in its corner. Marketing attribution gets tracked somewhere else. Product usage or renewal signals might not make it in at all. Even something as common as a leads to opportunity conversion report turns slippery because the activity trail is split over multiple systems. Think about it for a second. When was the last time your CRM dashboard explained a trend instead of just describing it? Showing you sales by region is one thing. Helping you understand why certain campaigns tanked or why renewals spiked after a service update, that requires more than Dataverse alone. And the problem compounds as your tech stack grows. Modern marketing runs on email, social, website personalization, webinars, none of which are Dataverse native. Support might live in a separate system, or your product team might track usage with an entirely different tool. You're left trying to stitch together the bigger picture with blindfolds on. It's not just a productivity headache, it's an executive level trust issue. Recent studies show that over 60% of business leaders admit they second guess their own analytics when those reports don't cover all the business data. When each team chooses different reporting tools and data sources, you don't just lose time to duplication, you risk making calls based on a partial view. That's where real business risk creeps in. Forgotten opportunities, marketing spend pointed at the wrong channels, support trends buried under separate reporting silos. Bad data doesn't just slow you down, it costs real money and lost deals. If you're hoping Dataverse on its own will get you to the promised land of unified analytics, it's like expecting a step counter to run your whole health plan. Sure, you know how many steps you took, but have you looked at your sleep, your calorie intake, or your heart rate? If you're only tracking CRM interactions, you miss out on what happens before leads land in your funnel or after support closes a ticket. Business performance isn't a single metric. It's a combination of signals from dozens of places. And until those systems talk, everything else is just a nice-looking snapshot, not a real diagnosis. What's wild is how normal this still is. Most Dataverse analytics setups give you just enough to feel busy, but not enough to drive real decisions. The reports might be automated, the dashboard's clear, but none of it breaks past the boundaries of the CRM. There's a reason most annual reviews still include some variation of "we don't have the numbers we need." And nobody wants to be the one explaining after the fact why a campaign failed or a customer churned. When the explanation was sitting in marketing data no one bothered to connect. The real danger here isn't technical, it's organizational paralysis. When teams hole up behind their data, nobody owns the full customer journey. Nobody can trace a marketing dollar to a closed deal or a support complaint to lost revenue because the pipes aren't built. Instead, companies are forced to play catch up, explaining in retrospect what might have gone wrong instead of spotting it in real time. So if you're tired of those blind spots, if you're done guessing at cause and effect and ready to start knowing, then you've got to kick down the walls. The fix isn't another dashboard. It's making Dataverse part of the bigger analytics engine, connecting it to Microsoft Fabric so you can finally put the whole story side by side and start making calls based on what's actually happening across your business. Now, let's see what it actually takes to make that connection happen without the usual permission headaches. Setting up the Dataverse Fabric connection, no surprises. Connecting Dataverse to Fabric sounds pretty simple until you actually sit down and try it. Microsoft shows you that clean connect button and hints that your CRM data will just start flowing, but the reality is a bit less magical on the first run. Before you get to the fun analytics, you run straight into a wall of permissions, settings, and security requirements that aren't always obvious if you've never done this before. The idea is to make your data life easier, but the first round can look anything but straightforward. Let's talk through what really happens when you spin up Fabric and try to point it at Dataverse. Step one is always permissions. There's no way around it. If you don't have the right access on both sides, you'll get stuck before you even see the connection screen. This isn't just about having admin rights in Fabric or being a Power Platform admin. You need both working in tandem. And on the Dataverse side, it's not just are you an owner? It's, do you have the weird camel case security role that gives data access, and did someone check the right box in Azure? It's amazing how often this single step turns into a game of ping pong between IT and business owners. Most admins, especially the first time, treat the process like connecting Power BI to SharePoint, something you can point and click your way through in under 5 minutes. But as soon as they try to pull a set of Dataverse tables, the access denied errors start rolling in. Sometimes Fabric tells you straight out, other times it's buried in a vague authentication prompt. Real talk. I once watched a project lead with full Fabric workspace admin rights spend an entire morning wrestling with data flows, only to discover she didn't have Dataverse system customizer access. She was blocked at every turn, and the only hint she got was a tiny error message that pointed to a missing privilege buried in a security group set years ago by someone who doesn't even work at the company anymore. The tricky part is, Microsoft's documentation doesn't just hand you a checklist. It throws a small novel at you: environment permissions, Power Platform admin rights, multi-factor authentication, and explicit consent prompts, each with their own nested documentation links. It feels like walking through a bureaucratic obstacle course with pop-up quizzes about least privilege models. Even if you think you've covered the basics, there's always a new, deeply technical checkbox lurking in the Azure portal, just waiting to trip things up. So here's how it actually plays out. You log into Fabric, prep a new data flow or pipeline, and kick off the process of linking Dataverse. Immediately, you'll get prompted to authenticate, usually with your Microsoft 365 work account. If your Fabric workspace doesn't have the right permissions in Dataverse's environment or vice versa, the process halts instantly. Sometimes Fabric will suggest you re-authenticate, sometimes it'll pass you over to Power Platform admin centers for additional setup, and sometimes it'll just give you a generic something went wrong. Even once you've sorted out the account side, you need to grant Fabric permission to access specific Dataverse environments. That means you're navigating both the Fabric workspace roles, typically contributor or higher, and the Dataverse security group that manages table-level access. At this phase, a lot of teams run face first into missing environment permissions. Fabric might be perfectly set up on your end, but unless the Dataverse environment admin has allowed external data flows, you're still out in the cold. Configuring the actual Dataverse link is supposed to make things easier. Microsoft added a guided interface recently, but it's still critical to check consent prompts carefully. Accepting these authorizes Fabric services to read and potentially write data depending on your setup. One misstep here, and you'll be spinning your wheels troubleshooting connection errors that only go away with the right tenant level consent. Here's how it usually looks. You open the Dataverse link wizard in Fabric, pick your Dataverse environment, click through authentication, and wait for confirmation. If you're lucky, you get a green light, miss the right permissions, and you're back at square one. For admins working in large organizations, this entire sequence can get tangled up in cross-team approvals. Security might have tight policies around enterprise apps, so you're filing change requests just to enable a checkbox. Any missing link in this process, usually read or write permissions at the environment or table level, will block table ingestion entirely. You think Fabric's got access, but Dataverse refuses to cooperate, and the error messages don't always point to the real problem. It's a bit like grabbing the keys to a new car only to learn no one left you the code to open the garage. But the effort pays off. Once permissions are lined up and the Dataverse link is confirmed, Fabric immediately recognizes your Dataverse instance as a live data source. Suddenly, tables that used to require tedious Excel exports are available in real time, refreshable, queryable, and fully integrated. That's when things finally start feeling modern. Data lives where it's supposed to, and you're not playing spreadsheet shuffling games just to get a quarterly report. This opens the door to real analytics, but here's the next challenge. What data should you actually bring over, and how do you get it into Fabric pipelines without turning things into a mess? From link to insights, ingesting and shaping Dataverse data. Connecting Fabric to Dataverse is half the battle. The next part is deciding exactly which Dataverse data actually moves over. At first glance, the temptation is to grab everything: accounts, contacts, leads, orders, every table you can find. But the reality hits fast. Dragging in every available table is a surefire way to bog down your workspace, eat up compute, and make your Fabric analytics harder, not smarter. On the other hand, cut corners and you might leave out something essential, like a reference or a relationship that you only notice is missing when your report breaks. There's a real balance to strike between too much and not enough. Most people run into this when they try to replicate a CRM dashboard inside Fabric and map it against data from a marketing or support system. Let's say you're a marketing analyst pulling sales order data from Dataverse so you can compare the impact of a new LinkedIn ad campaign. You load up the orders table and the campaign results from your web analytics source, only to realize the key that joins them is stashed in another Dataverse table, maybe contacts or activities. Suddenly, lead attribution comes off the rails because the Fabric pipeline is missing half the story. You end up in the same spot as before, guessing instead of knowing where leads actually came from. Those relationship tables, activities, or the many-to-many joiners matter more than most folks realize. Here's where experience comes in. It's not just the tables, it's how they connect. Dataverse data structure is friendly inside Dynamics, but by the time you get to Fabric, you're looking at flat tables, lookup columns, GUIs everywhere, and many-to-one links. Pulling orders without pulling contacts means you can't trace which customers belong to which deals. Skip the activities table and say goodbye to your timeline of emails, calls, or follow-ups. Even something like the owner field that looks simple inside CRM turns into a lookup nightmare on the analytics side. Cleaning all this up is key, otherwise you're trading one set of blind spots for another. That's why the ingest everything approach backfires. Large Dataverse environments get unwieldy fast, piling up unnecessary columns and rows. Fabric might chew through this at first, but every refresh gets slower as the volume grows. Your reporting window stretches from minutes to hours or even fails altogether with timeout errors. Meanwhile, your analysts still can't trust the data because core relationships are missing and metrics don't line up with reality. Plenty of teams try to fix this after the fact, but patching up broken joins and recalculating KPIs post-ingestion is a much bigger headache. You need a targeted strategy, something experts actually recommend. Start with a focused core, your sales tables, core contacts, and activities. Look at the business questions you want to answer first. Are you trying to tie lead sources to revenue? You need both the leads and their connected opportunities, plus any campaign records, if available. Trying to show the full customer journey, activities, calls, appointments, emails become critical. Support handoff, pull in cases and related resolution data. This isn't just about keeping things tidy. Starting with a minimum dataset means you actually understand how tables interact, and Fabric pipelines eat less compute and memory. Let's walk through a real-world setup. You pop open the data flow section in Fabric and choose to connect Dataverse as your source. You're hit with the schema browser, hundreds of entities, some obvious, others with cryptic names left over from Dynamics customizations. Begin with accounts and contacts. These anchor most CRM data models. Next, bring in opportunities or sales orders, depending how your sales team works, and activities for that interaction trail. If you need marketing data, look for any campaign or list member entities that tie to your external datasets. Now, select only the columns you actually need. Strip out old fields, deprecated columns, or one-off customizations that never get used. Keep it as clean as you can because columns add up quickly on refresh. The next phase is actual data shaping. Relationships in Dataverse are often kept as lookup fields, GUIDs, not names, which means you need joins after ingestion to turn those codes back into readable information. For example, an order record might list a customer GUID. After pulling both orders and contacts, you'll set up a join inside your data flow to serve as customer names. Lookups to system users like sales reps or owners need similar treatment. Grab the user table, map the records back, and suddenly your reports turn from cryptic codes to actual actionable insights. Data types are another pain point. Most fields come through as text or numbers, but Dataverse is known for custom pick lists, booleans tucked into integer columns, or date time fields that land in UTC, far from your reporting region. You'll want to set up basic transformations. Map pick lists to labels, clean up blank fields, and convert dates. This pays dividends as soon as you start blending in other sources, marketing results, web traffic, support requests, because consistent data types mean you can actually compare apples to apples across the business. A solid Fabric pipeline wraps all this together. Ever tried blending Dataverse opportunity data with an external Excel export from your campaign platform? That join falls apart if you're missing lookups or have mismatched data types. With shaping done during ingestion, you can build connections that don't crumble under load. The same goes for customer support. Bring case data over, tie it to contacts or accounts, and then see tickets alongside related deals or campaigns in a single report. If you aren't sure which tables to grab, don't overthink it. Multiple experts echo the same advice. Start with a focused set: sales, contacts, activities. Build out from there as real questions demand deeper context. This keeps your data flows quick, your analytics sharp, and your workspace manageable. Down the road, as Fabric and Dataverse features evolve, you'll be able to pull in more without re-engineering everything. Once you've set this up, everything snaps into place. Imagine seeing sales, marketing, and support data next to each other instead of siloed in separate apps. Lead attribution gets clearer, conversion bottlenecks reveal themselves, and suddenly you catch trends that nobody spotted in standalone dashboards. The wall is gone, but this is where the real potential starts. Using Fabric as the analytical hub, you combine these feeds to surface the moments and impacts hiding under the surface, turning all that raw CRM and business data into answers you can actually act on. Lighting up unified analytics, real-world impact. Let's get down to what actually changes once Dataverse and your other business data finally share the same analytics workspace. For most teams, it's the first time they get a report that stretches from the first marketing touch right through to final revenue. No data gaps, no spreadsheets chained together in the background. You're not just tracking clicks or email opens anymore. You're seeing whether those digital handshakes turn into pipeline and real deals in your CRM. Picture this: you crack open a new Fabric dashboard, and for once, your numbers actually align across sales and marketing. The report isn't asking the old which campaigns performed best based on surface level clicks. It's telling you which campaigns ended in closed-won opportunities logged by your sales team. Let's say you pushed 3 different campaigns last quarter, 1 through LinkedIn, 1 via an email blast, and 1 with Google search ads. With unified data, you're not relying on separate snapshots. Instead, you see a single view showing which leads from which campaign entered your CRM, how many turned into actual opportunities, and most importantly, how many went the full distance to revenue. Before, that kind of question almost always led to finger pointing between departments. The marketing team comes with click rates and new leads, but when the revenue dip shows up in sales, they claim those leads weren't qualified. Sales, on the other hand, says marketing just dumped a list over the wall. Nobody really knows where the fall off happened because nobody's looking at the same data in the same place. Throw customer support into the equation. Did cases spike after a big campaign? And things get even murkier. After integration, those arguments disappear fast. If you want to see the story behind your numbers, you just run the report in Fabric. One company, for example, wired up their Dataverse opportunity table with sources from Google Analytics and LinkedIn's campaign API, all inside Fabric's workspace. Now, each line in the opportunity data is peppered with details from web sessions, campaign IDs, and engagement scores. It showed them a few surprises: leads from the LinkedIn campaign converted to sales at twice the rate of their email list, but took longer to close. Website visitors who engaged with a particular content offer were 3 times more likely to convert, but only if they got a follow-up within 48 hours. No one was guessing anymore. The numbers wrote the story. These aren't vanity metrics or filler for QBRs. You start to notice patterns in how prospects move through the sales funnel. Maybe you see that LinkedIn generates fewer total leads than Google, but they end up being far stickier, resulting in repeat business or bigger deals downstream. Or support teams flag a spike in case creation after a particular type of marketing event, giving product managers advance warning and context for issues before they snowball. Small adjustments suddenly have a real impact. One team realized that a particular sales rep had a much higher close rate when working leads from webinars compared to email campaigns. By seeing the unified data, they adjusted lead assignments and saw opportunity close times drop by nearly a week. It's not flashy, but it's the sort of operational win that only comes from tracing the entire arc of a customer journey inside a single analytical workspace. This isn't about building dashboards just because you can. Fancy visuals are only as useful as the answers they provide. What matters here is the reliability of your insights and the speed you can act on them. Forrester found that organizations merging CRM, marketing, and web analytics saw decision cycles shrink by nearly a third. That lines up with what most admins and analysts see in practice. You go from, let me check with marketing to fill in this gap, to simply pulling a report that merges all the context in one place. And mistakes get easier to spot before they turn costly. If a campaign generates leads but none move through the opportunity stages in Dataverse, the gap is visible in real time. No waiting until the next quarter's review to realize a disconnect. Teams can course correct campaign spend or tweak processes while there's still time to hit targets. The debate shifts from whose data is right to what decision you make next. Inevitably, people get a clearer sense of cause and effect. You can point to a marketing campaign, follow those leads all the way to closed won status, and even tie in post-sale support tickets. Suddenly, investment decisions are based on here's what actually happened, not hunches or half stories. The audit trail is in black and white. When the C-suite asks what's working, you're confident in the numbers. You know which channels pull in the best leads, which reps handle them effectively, and what kind of follow-up closes the deal. Once you see this in action, it's hard to go back. Unified analytics in Fabric makes teams faster, cuts guesswork, and turns reporting into a real-time feedback loop. That's when business questions stop being so loaded. You're not fighting for a seat at the table. Your data is already there, presenting the answers that shape your next move. And since the unified model is flexible, you can keep layering on more sources, more detail, challenge assumptions, and move faster every time. So if you're ready to start seeing the full story, where marketing, sales, and support come together instead of colliding, it may be time to rethink how you treat Dataverse analytics. The difference between flying blind and steering with confidence, it's right there in your workspace, just waiting for you to turn the lights on. With the setup handled, you're free to explore new questions and actually trust what you find. If you're relying on Dataverse reports alone, you're settling for a filtered view of what's really driving your business. Bringing Dataverse into Fabric isn't just a checkbox for IT, it changes how you spot trends, fix bottlenecks, and tie your data to actual business outcomes. Every new data connection gives you more context, less guesswork. If siloed data has ever wasted your time in a review or left you doubting a decision, this integration is a shift worth making. If you want more detailed, no-nonsense guides on turning Microsoft 365's features into real results, consider subscribing to catch the next walkthrough.